I got given this MAXIMUS Hero Z690 motherboard completely free, but I need to fix it. I'm an electronics technician who mainly works on games consoles, but I am delving into other things, and a viewer got in touch asking me if I wanted this absolutely awesome motherboard completely free. So I said, yeah, why not? I'm a money grabbing YouTuber. I like free. So with that being said, my name is Hakko. Like I said, I'm an electronics technician. I mainly work on games consoles, but I do work on other stuff as well. So if that's the sort of stuff you're into, then make sure to get subscribed and turn on the bell notifications, and that way you don't miss any future videos. If you want to organise a repair, I do offer repairs for the public. So if you do need anything repairing, get in touch at thecoded.repair. And if you need parts and supplies for motherboards and stuff like that, you can buy those on my online store, consolefix.shop. But with that being said, let's get into today's video. Alright, so as I said, this is a motherboard which a very generous viewer has donated, but he has damaged the CPU socket, and that's going to need fixing before I can do anything with this board. But how nice is this board? It's absolutely huge, it's massive, or in the words of Tiny Tim, it's maffis. Wow, I love that. Oh, that's awesome, check that out. Yeah, just press a button to release your graphics card. Why not? Oh, that's sick. This is probably one of the most expensive and best motherboards I've held in my hand. Seriously. Like, my motherboard, I mean, my motherboard's a cheap board anyway, but it's got absolutely nothing on this. Wow. This is beautiful. So it's a, I think it's 13th and 14th gen Intel. It's Z690. It does support 12th gen as well, but not officially, I don't think. It's DDR5, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I don't really know that much about these boards. But what I do know is that if I do get this working, then I'm going to obviously buy an Intel board, an Intel CPU, probably a 14th gen or something, and I'll upgrade my rig because I'm using a 5950 at the minute. So I'll use this if I can get it working. It's got a few broken pins, so I can't power it on yet. I have got some DDR5 RAM, which I can use to test it. I did buy one stick just to use as a test stick. But I can't test anything yet because it's got some damaged pins on the CPU socket. So I'm hoping that it's not too bad and that the socket doesn't need replacing, because that is no easy task. So let's get it under the microscope and have a look, shall we? Oh wow, that's a tight retention clip. I forgot how tight Intel retention clips actually were. Damn. I am going to take this off because, well, I need to be able to access it, right? So what are we looking at here? A T20, 25, something like that. That one, whatever that is. It's T20, good guess. Lovely. I knew that anyway. Anyway, yeah, so a huge thank you to the viewer who's donated this. I truly appreciate it. And if you do have anything which you don't want to get fixed because, you know, either it's too expensive or you can't afford it and you just want to get rid of it, I'm happy to take donations, whatever it is, whatever it may be. Always happy to get free stuff. Right, so I've taken the retention bracket off, so now I can actually access the CPU socket. It's going to be really awkward because I'm left-handed, so I'm probably going to have to, yeah, go that way. It's going to be really awkward because we've got all of these heatsinks here. I can take them off, and I will take them off if needed, but obviously if I don't have to, then I don't want to take them off. I don't really want to strip the board down unless I have to. So it's really awkward for me to obviously get to it if it was facing this way. So I'm going to face it that way just so I can actually use my left hand. But even still, my right hand is going to be a little bit blocked. But anyway, let's have a look and see what it is that we're actually dealing with on this CPU. So the good news is we can replace a socket if needed. And I have got a socket if needed. This is a LGA 1700. Okay, so I can see a couple of damaged pins already, but I'm going to zoom in and get as close up to this as I possibly can. And it's going to be very, very difficult to focus on every single pin here for the camera. You do get a better field of view and a better perspective under the scope itself from an optical point of view, but it's very difficult to focus on every single pin, so I apologise here if this does go out of focus. Alright, so what are we dealing with here then? So there's a pin just here. So that pin needs to sit there. So I've basically just got to try and straighten these pins out, I guess. So I believe what happened here is the sender of this, the viewer, I think was trying to clean some thermal paste off or something maybe. Because we've got some crud around there. And they've obviously damaged the pins, which means that either they're going to short out when the CPU sat on it, or it's just not going to make contact with the pads on the CPU. So these are very, very fragile. I don't want to end up breaking any pins. Honestly, LGA pins are probably the worst invention ever. So pro tip, don't try and clean your socket. I think these are sitting too high. So this is a very, very, very tedious task. It's not, certainly not the most enjoyable. That one just don't seem to be sitting right. I think there's way too many pins damaged here. Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think there's way too many damaged pins here. I don't think this is going to be successful. I'm pretty sure it's just on this one side. So I'm just inspecting all of the pins here. See, this one here just don't seem to be sitting right. I mean, well, none of them are, I don't think. So they're meant to sit in like a groove, like just here, like this. You see where there's a groove, so they can spring down into. Yeah, I think I'll give that a try. If it don't work, I guess I'll just have to replace it. You know, the socket itself. Let's give it a whirl, shall we? So I've got a test CPU here. This is a G690. It's not officially supported, but it should work. Carefully place that in there. Okay. And I'm going to need some DDR5 RAM. Okay, I've got 8 gigs of DDR5 4800 RAM. So not the best stuff, but it's fine for testing. So the G690 should have onboard graphics, so we should be okay in that sense. So let's just connect up the 24 pin. We don't need that extra 6 pin power. That's just for, I believe, USB. So just connect up that 24 pin. And as someone pointed out to me, I can connect up the CPU 8 pin and not worry about the extra connector, because that's just for if you need extra power for overclocking and stuff. So I don't need that. I can just go ahead and just connect up one. So someone pointed out to me in the last motherboard video that I did that I can just connect up one and the other one's just for overclocking, so I'm not worried about that. If I do end up using this board, if I do get it working and end up using it, I'll obviously buy the correct power supply. I'll buy a more powerful power supply so as I can actually do some overclocking and stuff if I ever want to. Okay, it should have onboard graphics, so I should be okay there. I'll just take my capture card, or the HDMI from my capture card rather. So there's that. I shouldn't need a GPU, but I will need obviously a cooler. I don't think that I've got the bracket for this to fit on this board, but I have got this AIO cooler which I can use. I can just, you know, press it down sort of thing and just hold it in place while I do testing and stuff. I'm going to add some thermal paste. There is still some thermal paste on this CPU, but not really that bothered. It's just for testing, right? I don't think I've got the wire for the pump either, so I'm hoping this boots up without the fan running. It's very sketch, I know. Really need to get a couple of test heat sinks, I think. Okay. Let's fire her up. So the postcode is 0. Don't know what 0 is. Don't know if it's attempting to boot or not. So I just checked and I've got no display, and it says on ChatGPT that postcode 00 is no CPU detected. Okay, it's not even getting warm. Is that because it's not supported by this BIOS though, or what? Okay, so yeah, the postcode 00 is apparently a no CPU detected, but it could be that the BIOS just doesn't support it. So I've got the BIOS on a USB stick just here. I'm just going to unplug the HDMI and turn the power off. I'm going to get rid of the CPU for a minute. Fantastic spreading of the thermal paste that was, by the way. Absolutely awesome. Let's get rid of this. I'm going to remove the CPU carefully. Let's reapply power. There we are. I'm going to plug in a USB stick, and then I'm going to press the BIOS flashback button until it starts blinking. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's blinking, and it should take a couple of minutes just to flash back the BIOS to this version, whatever it's on. So once that stops, I'll apply power to the board. Well, I'll put the CPU back in. Okay, it's doing something. I don't think it's doing anything. It should have realistically stopped by now. I'll give it a few more minutes. Right, okay, that's actually stopped now. So, yeah, just me being impatient, I'm guessing. So, let's just make sure it turns on. It does. Okay, cool. So, now let's pop in the CPU again. I doubt this is going to work, and I've got a feeling that I'm going to have to change this socket. Nope, no CPU detected. So, I mean, that CPU should get pretty darn toasty, right? So, yeah, unfortunately, it looks like we are going to have to change this socket. That sucks. Alright, we're going to add plenty of flux, but I'm going to leave a couple of gaps at the top just for the air to follow through so as the flux can flow all the way under. And I'm going to get the BGA machine set up. Alright, so this is my BGA machine. It's a Atten IR Pro SC, and quite frankly I could go over how this machine works and stuff, but honestly 99.9% of people who even do repairs are not going to own this machine. So yeah, it's a little bit of specialist equipment if I'm being completely honest, and most people are not going to be able to do this purely because they don't have one of these machines, and it's really not worth buying one of these machines just to do one job, right? So ultimately the TLDR here is we've got a heater here and we've got a heater here. So these four heaters here are called the bottom plates. This one is called the top plate, and it's an infrared heater instead of hot air. So what it's going to do is it's going to use infrared heat to evenly heat up the motherboard slowly over time, and what that's going to allow me to do is safely remove this socket without damaging the rest of the board. So that's the TLDR for this. Obviously there's a lot more that goes into it than that, but you know, the TLDR is that we're going to heat it up really slowly and get rid of the CPU socket that way. So I'm going to just drop this board on here. I'm going to bring down my heater and line it up nicely. There we are. Okay, and I'm going to do this slowly. So I'm going to let that run, and I will be back when it's time to take the CPU off the board. Oh, sorry, the CPU socket off the board, rather. I'm going to move this one out of the way for now, because it's not needed for the first 5 minutes or so. Right, okay, we're about ready to go here, so I'm just going to bring this top plate into play. Bring it down. Just get it in position there. There we go. In fact, I think I need to just spin the board around, actually. There we are. And we should be good there. Okay, that's almost ready to come off now. Okay, and I've just knocked oh no. I've just knocked a bunch of capacitors everywhere. Oh, that sucks. So all those caps that are in between the CPU I've just knocked. Damn it. I mean, I can probably fix those, but that sucks. That really does suck. Oh no. Well, yeah, I've just knocked all of those caps everywhere. Okay, well, that's all gonna have to be fixed. Well, that sucks. That really does suck. But there's nothing I can do about that now other than fix it, right? Alright, they're not quite lined up, but if I just add a little bit of flux now, that should all jump into place. There is one that's still touching another cap, so I'm going to have to sort that. So one of the problems here, apart from the obvious, me being a complete fool and knocking them everywhere, is the fact that when I'm working on this sort of stuff, I need to be able to rest my hands on the desk. And this board is very hot, right? So the problem with that is I've got to kind of hover my hands in mid-air. And because of that, it makes it almost impossible to keep a steady hand. So if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you'll know that I do have little tricks which I can use to keep a steady hand. And obviously I can't do that here because we've got a piping hot heatsink right here, right there, and there's another heatsink just off to the left and another one just off to the top. So there's nothing I can do other than hover my hand in midair, which sucks. So I was hoping to get this video recorded and finished to get out tonight, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. It is not going to happen. I'm having way too many disturbances today for some weird reason. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do much. So I'm going to have to edit a different video and pause this in a minute. So I'm just going to basically prepare this. So I've got flux everywhere here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare this for the new socket. And then I'll put the new socket on either later on tonight or tomorrow. So the problem is, at the minute I've been recording for over an hour, and if you know anything about content creation, you'll know that if you've got raw footage of an hour, it's going to take you 3 hours just to edit that video, and I haven't got 3 hours. So yeah, I'm going to have to, well, I already know which video I can put out. I've got another video which I can put out for tonight, so it should be all good. What I'm going to do here is just tin all of these pads here with the iron and some leaded solder, and what that's going to do is it's just going to reduce the melting temperature of the pads, and it's going to allow me to wick away all of these pads and clean up the solder so as we can get some fresh solder on there. Okay, so there's that, and I'm going to take some solder braid. I've got some solder braid here. I'm just trimming off a few pieces just to make it easier to work with, and then I'm going to come in with the iron, and yeah, I'm going to need to use hot air to assist me. So the problem with using solder braid is that's going to pull on the pads and potentially tear pads up, so obviously we want to avoid that. So we use some hot air along with the soldering iron and the wick, and that is looking beautiful. Alright, that is nice and clean, and hopefully okay to accept a new socket. So you can't see it all at once, but yeah, I think it's clean enough. I am going to just clean up the flux from around here. So I'm just flooding it with IPA. Alright, and there we go. So yeah, that's pretty much ready now. It's got a bunch of IPA everywhere, but that'll evaporate anyway. The board is absolutely baking hot. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. And I think we're pretty much ready to put a new socket on here now. So I am going to pause the video for now. I'm going to stop the video for now, and I'm going to continue with it later on because I've got other stuff I need to do. Like I said, I need to edit a video and stuff like that. And I need to make sure there's a video out for tonight because I have started doing daily videos. So it's very difficult to keep up, but I'm managing. But what I am going to do really quickly, once this board's cooled down, because it's still pretty damn hot, so I'm not going to do it now. But once this board's cooled down enough, I'm going to power it on, and I'm just going to see, does this motherboard actually still power on? And have I put too much heat into it? Because if it doesn't power on, then it's pointless, right? And not having a socket on there isn't going to stop it from powering on. So yeah, I may as well at least see if it powers on and just make sure that that's okay. But what I'm going to do real quick is just clean this side of the board because it's been on my BGA machine and had heat directly underneath it, and plus flux has worked its way underneath as well. So just going to clean all of that up. Flux is easier to clean off when the board is warm, so that's the reason I'm doing it right now. But that all looks fine. It doesn't look like I've knocked anything on that side, so hopefully that's okay. The board doesn't look warped in any way, so that's okay. But yeah, not having a socket on, so just because this socket's not on, it doesn't mean that the board isn't going to power on. You know, it should still power on. The only thing that it won't do is post, but I'm looking for a 00 postcode, right? Because that's what we were getting before. The socket just acts as a conduit. You know, it's just a way for the CPU to make a connection with the board. So, I mean, theoretically, if I was to put solder balls on this CPU here, you know, if I was to put a solder board on every single pad and solder that onto the board, it would work. You know, it wouldn't need a socket, technically, but, you know. Yeah, I'm looking for a 00 postcode anyway. I'm rambling. But I just want to make 100% sure that we're not going to end up with a messed up board. Alright, so let's just give it some juice. Power on. Start. Yeah. We still have exactly the same as what we had before. We have a 00 postcode. So we should be okay there. I'm just going to make sure it does still actually have some sort of life, some sort of logic. So if you press and hold the power button, it should shut off, right? And that's exactly what it does. So I think we're good to go. I think we're good to get a new socket installed on this. So that's what I'll be doing a little bit later on. Right, okay. It's been a few hours and I just started to record and then realised that my microphone wasn't on. Lovely. So yeah, I've got the socket back on the motherboard. I'm just running the profile like I did earlier on, and then once that's done, I'm going to restart the profile and then run the top plate. So basically the same process, just to resolder this new socket on. So yeah, fast forward through this bit and hopefully in about 5 minutes we're going to have a working motherboard. One thing I've also done, but unfortunately the the microphone wasn't turned on. Well, one thing I've also done is just cleaned up this bracket here because we had some thermal paste on that. So obviously I've cleaned that up just to make sure that I don't have to clean it up later on. The problem is going to be, if I have to clean this up later on, there's a risk of damaging the socket again. So I'd rather clean it now and just get it out of the way, basically. But yeah, that's going to run, and hopefully very soon we're going to have a working board. Oh, and by the way, I have added flux to this as well. So I'll do a little bit of a voiceover here and just show you that I've added flux. Just a thin layer. Just enough to make sure that the pads don't oxidise. We don't want too much there because we don't want it to flood back through the pins and cause the flux to get on the pins itself, because that will cause a contact issue on the CPU. So we have to be careful how much flux we're putting on, especially considering we cannot clean this board afterwards. We can put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, but other than that, we can't clean the pins. So we have to be very careful here. Alright, so I've just reset this now just to basically run this profile properly once it's back up to temperature, or once the board is up to temperature rather. So I'm going to just get that all in position. Okay, that's lined up nicely, beautiful. Alright, so as you can see, I've got a thermocouple attached to the side of the CPU socket, and the temperature on the bottom of the board right now is showing, sorry, not the bottom of the board, the top of the board is showing 154 degrees Celsius, and the top plate has just kicked in, so it shouldn't take long for the top plate to get up to temperature, and basically the board should be pretty much at, or rather that area should be pretty much at solder melting point in the next couple of minutes. We're just approaching 200 degrees Celsius where the thermocouple is, so we should be about ready for this to be done. I believe it's about there. Okay, the profile is actually just finished, so it should be soldered. I did give it a tap and it did spring back, so we should be good. I just hope that thermocouple hasn't just knocked anything off, because it did pop out. I forgot to tape it down, but never mind. So I'm going to let that cool down, be about 5 minutes or so. Just let it cool down naturally, and then once it's cooled down, I can go ahead and just test it. Okay, so while the board is cooling down then, I'm going to put the socket retention bracket back on. Ow, that board is hot. I had to be as quick as I could there because it really isn't taking long for the metal bracket on the back to get hot. Okay, there we are. So there's the bracket back on. I'm going to drop the CPU on ready. Let's pop the RAM in ready as well. PSU power is off, so nothing to worry about there. Okay, so we've got CPU power. Okay. Still coming up 00. I'm wondering if it's this CPU not supported. I don't know. Right, well, from what I can tell, the CPU socket is soldered in line correctly. It's soldered fully. So unless it's just that the CPU just is not supported, I don't know, and I might end up having to go and get a CPU that is officially supported. Okay, when I put pressure on that CPU very slightly, it responded by resetting. You see? That socket, I've got a feeling is working, to be honest. But then, that CPU feels like it's getting warm. I don't know if that's just heat transferring through the board or not, though. Right, I'm going to flash the latest BIOS. So I've got BIOS version 4101 on here. I'm going to just disconnect this CPU. There we are. Just disconnect the RAM. Pop that into the BIOS USB. And press and hold the BIOS button. Okay, and that's just flashing the latest BIOS now. So that should update to the latest BIOS without the CPU installed. So I'll let that run, and once it's complete, I'll try the CPU again. But in theory, it should support this CPU. It's a G69000, it should support it. Okay, that's just completed. So the BIOS button on the back, the light has gone off, and this has stopped responding. So that should be good to go. So let's pop in the RAM and pop the CPU in. So this has got the latest BIOS on it now, according to the Asus website. Hopefully it works. No. Damn it. I don't know if it's going to be the CPU though, or the socket. Because when I press down and put pressure on the CPU, the board responds, it reboots. So it's got to be making a contact, right? I really don't know. I need another CPU, I think. Yeah, that kind of sucks. So that CPU, it feels like it's getting warm to me. It feels like it's trying to fire up. So I do have a feeling that this is going to be down to an unsupported CPU. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have a working CPU. I will have a look in my local CEX and see if they have any CPUs I can go and pick up tomorrow, just to see if I can, you know, pick one up and give it a test before I go ahead and edit this video and stuff. And obviously, if you see this, then that didn't happen. But yeah, unfortunately, without another CPU, without a guaranteed supported CPU, there's not really much more I can do in this video today. Yeah, I did look online and it said that in theory it should support it, but it could be locked out by the BIOS because of it being a high-end gaming motherboard. So it might be a case that it's locked out in the BIOS and that's why it's not recognising it. Because that CPU is warm, so it does feel like it's on. And I don't think that's down to heat transferring through the board, because the CPU socket now is cold. Like, there's still a bit of heat in these heat sinks, but the rest of the board is cold, and I don't think it's going to be down to that. if I'm being honest. I mean, yeah, that's really... Oh, I'll tell you what we could do. We could hook up the thermal camera, actually, before we go any further. So, let's power that off right now, and then by the time I've hooked up the thermal camera, it should have cooled down, and we should see if the CPU actually shows any signs of life. Okay, so you can see here, we've got some heat around here. So there's some heat there, but here on the CPU, I mean, yes, it's a little bit warm, but it's not excessively warm sort of thing, so... Let's just power this on. Come on, show some signs of life, please. No, maybe it's just a placebo effect. Yeah, I think it probably is. So, the temperature on that is like 50 degrees Celsius. So I think that's just heat transferring through the board. Oh, that sucks. So yeah, there's a bit of a bigger image there. You can see that's really not getting warm at all. That CPU isn't, unfortunately. So yeah, we've got some heat and stuff around where the MOSFETs are. So the board seems to still be working, but unfortunately I just don't know if it's going to be down to the socket or the CPU itself. Okay, well, yeah. If you're seeing this bit, then obviously it's going to be a no fix, and I couldn't get a CPU in time, and I will try and source another CPU, and obviously I will, you know, see what I can do about getting another socket as well, just in case. But if it is, you know, if it doesn't work, I could at least attempt to reflow the socket, maybe put a bit more flux on it or something. But right now, as it stands, it's just not working, and yeah, sucks to be me, I suppose. I did do a motherboard video the other day. It's on a Crosshair Hero 8 or something along the lines of that. That's a Ryzen, yeah, Ryzen CPU. But I'm waiting for another motherboard to come for that, so I can get some replacement parts for it. And unfortunately, raw mail have messed up, and I've returned the order from eBay back to sender. So yeah, there we go. So that's going to be it for now. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, it is a no fix. I know it sucks, and no one likes to see a no fix video, but I do have a rule: if I hit record, it gets edited and put out as a video, because there's always something to learn. It doesn't matter what you're doing, there's always something to learn. It's as simple as that. So yeah, with that being said, thank you very much for watching. If you do have any comments or questions, leave them down in the comment section down below. I'll always do my best to answer. I do always read comments, but I don't always get the chance to reply. I read every single comment though, even the bad ones, about how I'm apparently a drug addict and all of that sort of stuff. Think what you want, I don't care. Anyway, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. See you later. Bye for now.